It started with rainlight, soft, barely enough to make a difference, but enough to remind Luke that he was alone. Seattle had a way of feeling both beautiful and lonely at the same time, and that morning was no different. Luke, 32, sat in the far corner of Hearth Cafe, a cozy little spot on Pine Street that served strong espresso and played old jazz. He'd been coming there for years, always choosing the same corner seat by the foggy window, always with his laptop open and a blank document he never really typed on. He liked the routine. It made him feel safe, even if it didn't make him feel anything else. The coffee was warm, the playlist comforting, and the people were just distant enough to avoid small talk until she walked in. Maya. He didn't know her name yet. It's just that she walked in wearing a gray, oversized sweater that swallowed her frame, with messy auburn hair pulled into a bun like she hadn't planned to be anywhere important today. Her jeans were ripped at the knees, her eyes sharp and searching as she scanned the room for a seat. The cafe was packed. Trainee days brought in all the quiet souls, and she caught his eye with a small, polite smile. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, a story, maybe? A little sadness she didn't try to hide. Luke didn't even speak. He just nodded and moved his bag off the chair. That's when she sat too close. Not obviously close, not rude or flirty, just close enough that when she leaned forward to take a sip of her coffee, her shoulder brushed his. Close enough that he could smell her perfume, soft and warm like vanilla with a hint of something smokier underneath. Close enough that something in him shifted in suddenly. The seat he had sat in 100 times before didn't feel the same. They didn't talk at first. She opened a book. He pretended to work, but then a shared glance turned into a comment about the rain. A comment turned into a question about the book she was reading. And then somehow, without planning it, they were talking about music, about the city, about how hard it was to feel anything real in a world that moves so fast. She laughed at something he said, really laughed, tilting her head back just enough to make her hair fall around her face. And for the first time in a long time, Luke felt like someone actually saw him. He didn't mention Claire, the woman he had been with for 3 years. It's the woman waiting for him at home, probably texting him about what to order for dinner. He didn't ask Maya if she had someone. There was a strange silence between them, one that felt more honest than words. Like both of them knew this moment was temporary, but still important. Like they had wandered into each other's lives by accident, but maybe not by mistake. When she got up to leave, she didn't ask for his number. She just smiled and said, "Maybe I'll see you around." Luke nodded again, still not trusting his voice. And then she was gone. But the chair across from him still held the warmth of where she had been. The air still smelled faintly like her. And as he stared down at the same blank document on his screen, he knew one thing for sure. She had sat too close. And now, nothing. Felt the same asterisk. Luke tried to shake the feeling, but Maya stayed with him quietly, like a song stuck in the back of his mind. It had only been one conversation in a crowded Seattle cafe, but something about her wouldn't let go. He kept going back to Hearth Cafe, telling himself it was just part of his routine, but he knew that wasn't true anymore. He hoped to see her again, though he never admitted it out loud. Then one afternoon, a week later, there she was, same messy hair, same oversized sweater, this time with a camera around her neck and headphones draped over her shoulder. She smiled when she saw him, no hesitation, like she had been hoping to. She walked over and asked, "Mind if I sit here again?" Luke just nodded, heart already racing. This time, she sat even closer. They talked more that day, Maya told him. She was a photographer, mostly freelance weddings and small magazine gigs. She had moved to Seattle 6 months ago after a bad breakup and was trying to figure things out. As she put it, Luke did impress. He liked the way she spoke in fragments, like she was protecting certain parts of herself but still letting him in just enough. And she really listened when he talked about his graphic design job, the projects he hated, the pressure to create. The nights where nothing felt good enough. She leaned in when he spoke, like she genuinely cared. Claire, his girlfriend, used to do that too. In the beginning. But lately, their conversations had become short, practical. Groceries, bills, what show to stream next? Comfortable, yes, but comfortable, had started to feel like cold. Luke never told Maya about Claire, and Maya never asked. There was something unspoken between them. They weren't just two strangers in a coffee shop anymore. They were slowly turning into something else, something soft, dangerous, and electric. Every time Maya brushed his hand by accident, every time her leg touched his under the table, it sent a wave through him. Not lust exactly, something deeper. Something that scared him a little. It wasn't just physical. He felt seen, known, understood in a way that was rare. One rainy afternoon, as they sat watching drops slide down the window, Maya said quietly, "Do you ever feel like you're pretending to be happy?" The question caught him off guard. Stared at her, not knowing what to say. He didn't lie. Stared out, he didn't give her a polished answer. Stared at a face softened in a way that broke him a little. "I feel that way all the time," she whispered. "People think I'm fine. I'm not." It wasn't a confession, it was an offering. She was handing him a piece of herself, raw and unfiltered, and he wanted to hold it gently. Luke left the cafe that day feeling both alive and conflicted. Claire was waiting at home, and he tried to be present. He really did. He helped her, cooked dinner, watched a documentary with her, even kissed her goodnight. But when he closed his eyes, it was Maya's voice he heard. Her eyes he saw, her words replaying like a haunting melody. He hadn't touched Maya, not in a way that would count as betrayal, but emotionally he was already slipping. He was reaching for something warm and real that his life with Claire no longer gave him. And deep down, he knew the truth. This wasn't just a passing crush or a moment of distraction. It was the start of something. And the worst part? He wasn't sure he wanted to stop it. Asterisk, it happened on a Friday night that didn't feel special until it was too late to forget. Claire had flown out to Vermont to visit her parents. Just for the weekend, Luke was left alone in their quiet apartment. He thought he'd use the time to catch up on work, maybe clean, maybe just breathe. But by 9 p.m., the silence felt too loud. And Maya's name was sitting at the edge of his thoughts, waiting for permission. He hadn't seen her in days. He hadn't texted. Neither had she. But the distance only made the pull stronger. And then, as if the universe was done playing coy, his phone lit up. A message from Maya. "Are you up?" Just 3 words. But his hands trembled. His heart knew before his mind could argue. He answered quickly, too quickly. 20 minutes later, she was standing at his door wearing jeans, a black hoodie, and no makeup. Still beautiful, still dangerous. He let her in. He stepped across the threshold like she wasn't sure if she should. But her eyes told a different story, tired, wanting, soft. Luke poured 2 glasses of wine. They sat on the couch, a playlist humming low in the background. They didn't speak at first, both of them pretending this was normal, just friends sharing a drink. But nothing about this night felt innocent. The air was heavy with tension, too many unspoken things filling the space between them. Eventually, the conversation found its rhythm: childhood stories, memories of old friends, the kind of deep talk that only happens when the rest of the world is asleep. Luke told her things he hadn't told Claire in years. Maya listened with her whole body leaning in, holding his gaze, sometimes touching his arm when something moved her. That single touch made his breath catch. The wine made it easier, but not blurry. Nothing about this moment felt unclear. In fact, everything felt sharp to real. The kind of clarity that only happens before a mistake you can't undo. At one point, she tucked her legs underneath her and turned to face him completely. Her voice dropped. "I don't know why I came," she said, almost to herself. "I knew I shouldn't." Luke looked at her, heart pounding. "But you did," he said, just above a whisper. Maya stared at him, her eyes flickering between fear and something much deeper. And then she leaned in, slowly, carefully, as if asking permission with every inch. When their lips finally met, it was soft, gentle at first. Question. But the answer came fast, and it came hard. Luke kissed her back like he had been holding it in for weeks. 'Cause he had. Their hands found each other without thinking. There. Bodies moved like they already knew the script. But it wasn't just about desire. It was something deeper, something terrifyingly intimate. They held each other like they were both trying to forget the rest of the world. When it was over, they didn't say much. Maya sat on the edge of the bed, pulling her sweater over her shoulder, her face unreadable. Luke didn't ask her to stay, and she didn't ask for anything either. She kissed him once, more quickly. This time Aunt whispered, "I'm sorry." Then she slipped out the door into the night, leaving behind nothing but the echo of what they'd done. The apartment felt colder once she was gone. The silence returned, only this time it was filled with guilt. Luke sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, already replaying every second. There was no undoing it. He had crossed a line. He couldn't uncross. He didn't know what this meant or what would come next. But one thing was certain. Something inside him had changed, and there was no going back. Claire came home on Sunday evening, her suitcase rolling behind her and a smile on her face like nothing had changed. She hugged Luke at the door, kissed him softly, and told him how her mom kept asking when he was going to propose. Luke laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that doesn't reach your eyes. Inside, he was already drifting. Every word Claire said felt a little farther away. He didn't mention Maya. Of course not. He told himself he just needed time to figure out what it meant, what she meant, and whether what happened that night was a moment of weakness or something more. But the guilt came fast and hard. It lived in the pit of his stomach and followed him into every room. Claire didn't notice right away. She was too busy talking about her parents, her favorite coffee shop back home, the sweater she bought on sale. Luke listened, nodded, smiled when he had to, but his heart was somewhere else. He tried to act normal, but the distance grew. At night, he lay beside Claire, wide awake, staring at the ceiling while she breathed softly next to him. He couldn't stop thinking about Maya, the way she looked at him, the way her hands moved through his hair, the way she said "I'm sorry" like she meant it, even as she walked out. He didn't know if she'd reach out. She didn't, he didn't either. Maybe they were both afraid of what came next. Maybe that night had said too much without a single word spoken after. Claire noticed the change by Thursday. She asked if everything was okay. Luke said he was just tired. Work had been a lot. She believed him at first. But the space between them started to feel wider, even when they were sitting side by side on the couch. She leaned on him during a movie, and he flinched slightly. She looked up at him, confused. "Are we okay?" she asked. And this time, he didn't have the strength to lie. He couldn't keep pretending. He really looked at her hand for the first time. In months, he didn't feel love. He felt guilt. He felt loss, not love. "Are you still in love with me?" she asked again, softly this time. That silence, the pause between her question and his answer, was all she needed. He didn't have to say a word. She stood up slowly, nodded once, and whispered, "Okay." No shouting, no crying. It's quiet, mature, heartbreaking. She packed a bag that night and left. He offered to help. She said no. There were no dramatic scenes, no broken plates, no slammed doors. Just the dull sound of her suitcase wheels rolling down the hallway, and the click of the door closing behind her. The apartment felt like a stranger's place, now too quiet. It's too neat, too full of memories. Luke sat on the couch where he and Maya had kissed and felt like he had broken something permanent. Claire hadn't begged him to stay. She hadn't asked for details. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she had seen it coming before he did. Sometimes. The end of love isn't a scream, it's a whisper, a slow fade, a quiet goodbye. He didn't go back to the cafe right away. And Maya didn't text him, but he knew he'd see her again. He just didn't know when or what it would mean. All he knew was that the life he had built with Claire was gone. And in its place was a silence that felt more honest than anything he'd said in months. Asterisk, it was 2 weeks before Luke saw Maya again. He had avoided Hearthcalf, afraid of what he'd feel if she was there or worse. She wasn't, but something pulled him back like unfinished business that refused to stay buried. He walked in late on a rainy Thursday afternoon just as the sky turned silver and the smell of wet pavement filled the air. There she was, sitting in the same seat they always shared, black coffee in front of her, camera bag on the floor. She looked up and saw him. No smile, no surprise. Just that still, knowing, look, she had like she already felt everything he hadn't said. Luke hesitated, heart thudding. Then he walked over and without asking sat down across from her. They didn't speak at first. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was heavy, loaded with everything they'd done, everything they hadn't said. Finally, Maya looked at him and said quietly, "You look different." Luke gave a small, sad smile. "Claire left," he said, simple as that. Maya blinked, her lips parting slightly, but she didn't look shocked. "Because of me?" she asked. He shook his head. "Because of me." Wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. She had been the spark, yes, but the fire had started long before her. Maya looked down at her coffee, then back at him. "I didn't come back because I was afraid. I didn't want to be the reason your life fell apart." Luke reached across the table, gently touching her hand. "You weren't the reason. You were the moment I finally woke up." His voice was low, honest. Maya didn't pull away. For a second, she closed her eyes, like she needed to let that truth settle. Then she opened them and whispered, "I missed you." That was all it took. The air changed. The space between them melted. Luke stood, and so did she. No need to speak. They both knew where this was going. They walked the few blocks to her apartment, not touching. But so close their arms brushed with every step. When they got inside, it was quiet, dim, and warm. Her walls were covered in black and white photos, all soft, emotional, human moments. Luke took it all in as she poured them wine, her hands slightly trembling. He watched her closely, how she moved, how she breathed, how carefully she carried herself. He could see the walls she had built and the cracks forming in them now. She handed him the glass, and when their fingers touched, it was like the beginning of something new. This time, when they kissed, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't stolen. It was slow, deep, and full of questions. Their bodies knew each other, but this time it wasn't about passion alone. It was about choosing, about giving in to what they had. Tried to resist. Afterward, they lay together under soft blankets. Bare skin against bare skin. The sound of rain tapping on the window. Luke traced slow circles on her back, and Maya spoke softly into the silence. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I never wanted to be someone's escape." He pulled her closer. "You weren't. You were the truth I'd been running from." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry, just held him tighter. That night didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the guilt or the fear or the questions about what would happen next. But it was real, honest. Two broken people choosing each other, not out of need, but out of recognition. As if their souls had collided before either of them had the words to explain it. For the first time in years, Luke didn't feel numb. He felt something. And for now, that was enough. Weeks passed and life settled into something that almost felt like peace. Luke and Maya fell into a quiet rhythm, slow mornings, shared meals, laughter that came easier than it used to. Their love wasn't wild or flashy. It was steady, honest, built in the stillness of healing. Maya would lie with her head on Luke's chest, and he'd run his fingers through her hair, thinking about how strange and beautiful it was to feel at home in someone again. For once, he didn't feel like he was pretending. He didn't feel like he had to perform. With Maya, he could be messy. He could be human. But underneath the calm, something uneasy still lingered. Claire hadn't reached out since the day she left, and that silence made the guilt grow louder inside him. Not because he regretted Maya, but because the end of one love should never feel like the beginning of betrayal. He knew he owed Claire more than just silence. He owed her the truth. One Sunday morning, Luke finally sent Claire a message. "I hope you're okay. Can we talk? Just once." Hours passed before she replied. "Tomorrow." Lille p.m. Same cafe. That night, Maya noticed something in him shift. She touched his cheek and asked, "Are you okay?" He nodded, but it wasn't a lie or the full truth. "I'm just thinking about how much I hurt someone who didn't deserve it." Maya's eyes dropped, her voice barely a whisper. "And does that mean you still love her?" He reached for her hand, held it tight. "No, but she deserves to hear that from me." Not just disappear like it meant nothing. Maya nodded slowly, her fingers tightening around his. "Then go. Say what you need to say, I'll be here." At the cafe, Claire arrived exactly on time, her hair pulled back, wearing the same green coat she always wore in the fall. She looked strong, but tired. Like someone who'd cried enough and was finally done crying. Luke stood up when she approached, unsure how to begin. She sat, folded her hands, and looked straight at him. "So, what did you want to say?" He took a breath. "I'm sorry, Claire, for how it ended. For how I left. For not being honest when I should have been." Claire studied him for a moment, then said calmly, "You loved her while you were still with me, didn't you?" Luke nodded. "I didn't plan to. I didn't mean for any of it to happen. But I was gone long before I met her. I just didn't know how to say it." Claire leaned back, exhaled, and shook her head gently. "You should have said something. You could have trusted me enough to say it was over." Her voice didn't break, but her eyes told a different story. Still, there was grace in her. Strength. She stood up after a moment, slung her bag over her shoulder. "I hope you're happy, Luke. I really do. But don't ever mistake silence for forgiveness." And then she walked away strong.com, unfinished. That night, Luke went back to Maya's apartment. She didn't ask questions, he didn't offer details. Instead, he pulled her into his arms and said, "I'm ready now." For all of it. Maya didn't cry, but her lips trembled just enough to say she believed him. They didn't make promises that night. They didn't talk about forever. But in that quiet space, tangled together beneath soft sheets and moonlight, they chose each other again, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And maybe that was the real kind of love, the one that begins after the lie, after the hurt, after the silence. The kind that stays when everything else is gone. When she sat too close, everything changed. And somehow, in the middle of all the mess, they found something real, something worth staying for. Let me know if you'd like a voiceover script or YouTube video intro based on this series.